Hi everyone, it's Miss Terry, and I'm here today to talk about my April picks for students in grades 5 through 6. We'll go through some fiction, some graphic novels, and some nonfiction. This first book is called Falling Short, and it tells the story of two boys who are best friends, Marco and Isaac, and they are kind of opposites. Marco is short, he's very academically gifted, and Isaac is very, very tall, but he struggles a little bit more with his grades, but he does have that athleticism that Marco is really interested in, and he's kind of hoping that maybe this year he can join the basketball team, and maybe that will get his dad to come back into his life. Whereas Isaac has set the goal of improving his grades, and he's hoping that will make his parents stop arguing less. But the two of them know that without each other, neither one is going to make it through middle school. So it's called Falling Short. Under the Whispering Door tells an interesting story about a very strange and unusual tea shop, and it starts out with a boy named Wallace who is being collected from his funeral nonetheless by a reaper, and Wallace is starting to suspect that, you know what, I might not be alive anymore, and he's brought to the tea shop that is owned by a man named Hugo, and Hugo says, okay, if you're not really ready to cross over, which is what my tea shop is for, then I give you 1 week to kind of come to terms with the fact that it's time to move on to the next stage of whatever happens after your life is over. So that is called Under the Whispering Door. Wild Survival, this one is called Swimming with Sharks, is a series about a young girl whose name is Adriana and her older brother Faye, and they get to travel around the world with their parents, who are the stars of a TV show called Wild Survival. And in this episode, they are traveling to Sri Lanka, where they heard rumors of a Pondicherry shark. I'm sorry, there's some tough names in here. I have to give myself a few notes. And when they arrive, they discover that the Pondicherry shark that they have heard about is actually a star of a restaurant, and is kind of kept in this tank, and the parents are like, okay, is this the shark they're talking about, and would the owners of the restaurant be willing to release the shark back into the wild? Meanwhile, Adriana is pretty sure that she's seen two poachers that her family has run into before lurking about, and she's worried that they also are after the shark, and she decides that her and her brother are going to stop them in their tracks. So if you like survival stories, you'll enjoy this. If you also like shark stories, you'll enjoy this. I also have the newest one in the Last Kids on Earth. This one is entitled The Doomsday Race, and in this one, Jack's zombie controlling skills are getting even stronger, and he and his friends are on a trek to the mysterious tower to stop the main bad guy. His name is Rizachik, the Ancient, and along the way, they end up getting caught up in something called Mollusk City, which is a giant centipede that has a super incredible mall on the top of it, and there they discover a city with some of the friends they've met in the past, including some of the monsters that they've had to deal with. So this is the next adventure in that series, and as you can see, this one is now a Netflix series also. Dog Star is a historical fiction, and it follows the life of a dog named Laika, who was the Soviet dog that was chosen to go into space in 1950 when all of kind of the big major powers of the world, including the United States, were kind of trying to be the first ones to get somebody into space. And Nina is the girl in the story, and her mom is actually one of the scientists that's responsible for training Laika. And Nina discovers that there isn't really a plan to bring Laika back from space. And she's like, you know what? I don't really think I want this dog to go if it means that they're never going to be able to come back. And this is her story. It's based on a real event. They did send a dog into space, but the girl and the story of not wanting them to go is made up. The Princess Revolt, this is the first in a series called Unraveled, and this is about a girl named Sia, and she actually hasn't slept in 11 days. And she discovers that somebody who had helped her with her baby insomnia actually cast a spell on her, an anti-princess spell. Well, now it's kind of backfiring, and she's finding shoes in her locker, her crush suddenly turns into a beast, her hair is starting to fall out, she all of a sudden has this incredible singing voice, and woodland animals have a tendency to follow her around, and she's like, what is going on? And then a pack of very irate princesses show up and say that it's all Sia's fault that they're not getting their happily ever afters. So now Sia realizes that she's going to have to find out who cast this spell on her and how can she break it. So it's called Unraveled, the Princess Revolt. Kind of a fun take on your favorite fairy tales. This next one, Seiseirios and the Desert of Souls, is about a girl named Cece, and they live in a community that is haunted by these unnatural creatures. And her sister Juana is very courageous and brave and is very happy to perform the rituals that keep their community safe from these creatures. Unfortunately, Cece's kind of the opposite. She's very shy and quiet and isn't sure that she has what it takes to follow in her sister's footsteps. Unfortunately, she doesn't have a choice because her sister Juana has been kidnapped by one of the most notorious creatures that has been haunting her community, and she decides to go out into the desert in order to bring her sister back. Okay, so it's called Seiseirios and the Desert of Souls. There's a lot of Spanish words sprinkled in throughout, so if you're learning that at school, you might enjoy that. This next one is called Orphans of the Tide, and this takes place in the city, which is really kind of the last piece of land left, or at least part of the last piece of land that has been left, as the rest has been submerged by something called the Enemy, which was an evil god that cast out all the other gods and sunk most of the city. And this god also has this tradition where he randomly possesses innocent individuals to continue to do harm to this community. Well, when a strange boy washes in with the tide in the belly of, in the belly of a whale, the town is pretty convinced that this boy, his name is Seth, is actually the new vessel, and they decided the only way to save the town from him is to kill him. Well, the girl who found him, her name is Ellie, has decided that that's not really fair. It's not Seth's fault. We don't really know for sure if it's the god's vessel, and she wants to help save him along with her orphan friend Anna, who has some secrets of her own. So it's called Orphans of the Tide. Kind of a creepy premise to that one. The In-Between also has a little bit of scariness to it. This is about a boy named Cooper, and Cooper's dad has left. He's left the family, his mom and his sister, and has decided to go live with a new family. And Cooper's really having a hard time with this. He's just not coping well. His friendships have kind of fallen apart. He's been asked to help his mom with his younger sister who has diabetes, so they have to monitor her blood sugar very closely. And then a strange, mysterious girl moves into an abandoned house near them and can't seem to stop staring at Cooper. And Cooper's kind of had enough and decides he's going to confront her. And he realizes that the logo on her jacket is tied to places that have had some pretty awful disasters happen. And he's trying to solve this mystery of who is this girl? Is she responsible for some of these disasters? And does that mean that another disaster is coming to his life as well? And he and his sister and this girl decide to figure out what is going on. Again, a little bit on the creepy side. Loyalty by Avi is a new one that takes place in the American Revolution, and it's got a little bit of an interesting twist because the main character, his name is Noah, and his dad is actually a pastor for the Church of England, so he actually supports the crown during the American Revolution. He doesn't think that the United States should come about. Unfortunately, this does get Noah's father killed, and Noah and his mom are forced to flee to Boston, and that's where Noah decides to earn some extra money being a British spy reporting on the Americans. During this time, he also ends up becoming friends with a free black man named, I think it's Jola, and they kind of teach each other a lot about both sides and realize that there are some things that both sides are doing that isn't right. So this is called Loyalty. If you like war stories, you probably will enjoy that one. So those are the fiction ones that I have with me today. Let's talk a little bit about some of the graphic novels. I do have both of the I Survived graphic novels. The first one is I Survived the Nazi Invasion of 1944, and then the second one is I Survived the Attacks of September 11th. So if you enjoy the book series, you might also like to check out the graphic novel versions of those books. And I have a feeling that most of them are going to be turned into graphic novels. This next one is called The Golden Hour, and this is about a boy named Manuel who is really struggling with anxiety. He witnessed, unfortunately, some gun violence that has really left him shaken, and he's with his mom. Sometimes he has panic attacks, but he kind of tries to figure out a way to anchor himself so that he can get through some of his anxiety, and he decides to start taking photographs, and he's actually very good at it, but he's really kind of lonely. He's kind of a latchkey kid. He goes home after school and his mom is at work. But then he gets paired up with Sebastian and Keisha for a school project. And Sebastian owns a grass-fed farm out in the country and has a new calf that he is raising to bring to the county fair. And Manuel makes friends with Sebastian and Keisha, and they decide to work together to get him to the fair and hopefully to win. So it's called The Golden Hour. Shark Summer takes place on an island, the island of Martha's Vineyard, and this is about a girl named Gail who really just kind of struck out as a pitcher in baseball. She ends up causing an accident that she breaks her arm, and her season is over. So she decides she has to do something else this summer to keep her entertained. And that's when she discovers that a film crew has come to the island with a mechanical shark to film a shark movie, but they're also hosting a film competition, and Gail decides to pair up with some of her friends to make their own film and the possibility of confronting the island's own sea monster. So it's called Shark Summer. Again, written in graphic novel format. Wingbearer is about a girl named Zuli, and Zuli is being raised by bird spirits that live in the great tree of life. And she's very happy there. She doesn't really know how she ended up there, or why she's the only person that she knows. But then this sinister force comes to suck the life out of the tree, and Zuli and the birds realize that they're going to have to go below to find out what is going on. And that's when Zuli meets this ancient dragon that is going to help her and her friends beat back this evil force and try to save the day. So it's called Wingbearer. The Legend of Bright Blade is about a prince. His name is Prince Altor, and his mother is actually Lady Brightblade. And she's this great hero that kind of vanquished evil from their kingdom. And Prince Altor kind of finds it difficult to follow in his mom's footsteps. He'd really like to be a hero, but there doesn't seem to be anything to be heroic about. So one day he ends up running away in the hopes of finding some adventure, and unfortunately he does find quite a bit as he realizes that there are some evil forces brewing around the kingdom that are getting ready to attack. And yes, there is a dragon in this story as well. And then the last graphic novel I'm going to talk about today, this one is called Star Beasts, and this one actually is about a pup from Earth who decides to go out into space to become a member of the Star Beasts, and it's their job to protect Earth and the galaxy and to kind of spread kindness from the evil that would wish to do its harm. And they end up getting into a battle with the evil emperor of Pluto, who is hoping to build a monster to take over the galaxy. A lot of fantastical creatures in this, but that is Bandit, the pup, who is going to be a member of the Star Beasts. All right, so let's look at some of the nonfiction. This first one is called Just Be You. This is by Malika Chopra, and this one just talks about being yourself and different ways that you can cope with some of the drama and the emotions that happen during middle school, you know, making friends, having embarrassing things happen, learning about your feelings, creating a name for yourself, and just kind of trying to figure out who you want to be and how you want that to look in your life, and just some different ways that you can make that happen. So it's called Just Be You. I do have a new guide to Fortnite. This is a 2022 guide, so if you're interested in Fortnite and you want to learn more about what's happening in the game, this would be a good choice for you. The Cat Encyclopedia for Kids is a beautifully photographed book that talks all about everything you would ever want to know about cats. And then it also goes through a lot of the different breeds and talks about how those breeds different from the other. It also has a section on cat behavior, and if you decide you want to have a pet cat, it also talks about wild cats and all of that kind of stuff. That's called the Cat Encyclopedia for Kids. I think I've brought the dogs and the shark ones before. So this next one is actually a graphic novel nonfiction. It's called Why Is Everybody Yelling? And it's a memoir of a young girl. Her name is Mara Sabrina, who has grown up in a Catholic family. Her dad is very Italian. She's always thought she was Catholic. And then she discovers that her family is actually Jewish, and they are survivors of the Holocaust. And this changes everything for her. And she realizes that there's more to her family story than what she originally thought. Her and her mom end up traveling over to Europe to kind of see some of the places where her family is originally from, and this is her story. So it's called Why Is Everybody Yelling? Because her family is a very loud immigrant family that just talks over each other a lot. This next one is called I think it's just called Elias Ana. And this is about a girl named Anna whose family is from the Ukraine. Very timely story, but this is actually historical story when Germany invaded the Ukraine during World War II. So her family was taken out of their home by the Nazis and forced to do this long march. And Anna was supposed to go to this music conservatory, so she's very much in love with the piano and the music. And at one point, her dad ends up bribing a guard, and Anna escapes, carrying with her only her sheet music and her desire to find freedom. This book is also a good read because it's written in verse, so it's also kind of a short nonfiction read. The Wild World Handbook Creatures is a book all about animals that are in need of protection, and it goes around the world looking at these animals, what's happening to them in their habitats and the areas where they live, what scientists are doing to protect them, and then what you actually can do as a young person to make some changes in your lives and in the lives of these animals that are in danger. And each section also has a biography of a famous scientist who has helped those animals. This next one is called The Deadliest Diseases Then and Now, and this looks at plagues and pandemics throughout history, and it goes all the way up to COVID-19 and talks about the beginnings of that, what scientists learned about the disease, and then what we can maybe expect moving forward when it comes to these diseases that kind of knock our world off its course. So it's called The Deadliest Diseases Then and Now. Okay, so it's just... And then Get Coding 2 is a new book that has build 5 computer games using HTML and JavaScript. So if you've kind of dabbled with JavaScript or HTML a little bit and you'd like to learn a little bit more, this one gives you some very simple step-by-step instructions on how to build those games, but then also gives you the opportunity to really customize it to what you would be interested in learning how to code. And like I said, it's very literally like type this, type this, type this, type this, and then suggestions on how to personalize it and make it your own. And then the last nonfiction I'm going to talk about today is called Hard Court. This is stories from 75 years of the National Basketball Association. So at one point, basketball was in danger of being kind of kicked out of the big sports because they couldn't get people to buy tickets to the game because they were very boring. You know, now we have such high scoring games, 100 to 89, but it used to be like the score would be like 11-7, and it was because teams didn't have to shoot. They could just grab the ball and just keep it away from the other team without ever making a shot. So then they decided to add the shot clock in, and that changed the course of history for basketball. So if you enjoy stories like that, you probably would enjoy Hard Court. And it also has a lot of biographies of the famous players throughout that time. Hope you find something to read.